Welcome to the Wellness Show, a podcast on health and wealth. I'm your host, Tyhson Banighen, the founder of the Extraordinary Healing Arts Academy. Join me as we get the latest insight, tips, and strategies from wellness providers, coaches, and successful, heart-centered entrepreneurs, and much, much more. This is the 200th episode show. We're at a milestone here, and I'm very excited, which is how to fear nothing, absolutely nothing. And we have Leaha with us, who's going to explain what that means, how to fear nothing. So welcome to the show.
Well, thank you, Tyson, and congratulations on this momentous occasion of your 200th episode. Yay! That must feel just amazing, because I know you put out, I know you put out wonderful work, and I think it's really funny that we're actually doing this episode on Fearless Friday. So it just all seems to coincide and be working together, which is great. So I love talking about eradicating fear in our lives. I think we've done lots of episodes on other shows talking about this whole idea about fear and where it comes from. And there are times when fear, it's important to be prudent. So you don't want to get eaten by a wild tiger, but that doesn't happen very often in our lives currently. You also don't want to get hit by a car. So there's prudent fear in times when it's appropriate to feel fear and move and be quick about it. But a lot of us spend our time, our day, in living in uncertainty and fear that looks like resentment and anger and hostility and all these really stalling sorts of behaviors. So I work a lot with clients in my practice, talking about fear, and especially in terms of chronic and terminal illness. I myself am gene positive for Huntington's disease, which is a genetic neurological familial disease that is supposed to science to be incurable. So, and that's from the position of actually having something that I should be really afraid of. I went, scientists thought the world was flat at one point too. So I'm going to go on the side of taking control of this idea of fear, and instead turn the uncertainty into as much certainty in my life as I can. So that's really what I love talking about.
So how were you able to do that? I mean, that's pretty amazing. I know from German New Medicine, when people are diagnosed with the big C word, cancer, right, that according to that whole belief system or methodology, that the actual diagnosis from the doctor is more traumatic than the actual cancer itself. So, I mean, you must have had a bit of a shock when you had that diagnosis. So did you have the wherewithal or gumption or inner insight or whatever to turn that corner and say, hey, I don't have to buy that?
Right. That's a great question. And I think a lot of where my response to a lot of things comes from is from childhood. When I was young, imagine that. I grew up on a farm, and in a farm life and in farm living, we're really connected with nature. At least we were on our farm. So I saw the cycles of birth and death as just a really natural thing. I also saw Mother Earth every year do her thing, growing new crops, and we would sow seeds and things would grow, and sometimes the plants would be what would be framed not perfect, but they were certainly, not imperfect. They were just not, maybe showroom ready. So there was a whole variety of things that were okay. And we just experienced that on a day-to-day basis. So we saw shocking things sometimes in the animals, and we had crops that were wiped out, and we saw hailstorms and lightning storms, not just all kinds of things that were completely outside of our control. And that my parents really were of the mindset at that time, well, you know what, it's just going to happen. It's nothing that we can do about that. But what we can do in the morning is we can go and sweep up the leaves and pick up the dead branches and make the yard look nice again, and take care of cleaning up the crops, whatever's left. And if there's some problem with an animal, then we'll take care of that. But it was just always very much people in emotional control. I did not see, the sky is falling, Chicken Little behavior from them. And throughout life, I think we all have challenges that we either choose to see as the sky is falling and or we go, okay, like, what am I going to do with this? So the challenge is growing the adaptation and the maturity. I don't think I'm special. I think that everyone can learn how to do this.
I'm wondering whether, Leah, the fact that you were raised on a farm and close to nature and saw, like you said, you had birth and death was just part of life.
Yeah.
Do you think that maybe that connection to nature and the cycles of life was part of the grounding that allowed you to make this transformation or change quickly in your consciousness?
Oh, yes, absolutely. And also because Mother Earth, I go to often for healing. And I had said to you one of our first conversations just about how cool I thought it was that you did the water witching or the dowsing, because I learned that as a young girl. And, we would joke around that I was doing the water witching because the red hair, but I was very connected to the elements. I can remember laying in the meadow very distinctly, day in, day out, and just really being connected to earth, closing my eyes and, smelling the smells and hearing the wind and the breeze and the birds chirping and just all the crickets singing and frogs doing their thing. And really you could hear it all, and you just felt warm and embraced, and sinking into Mother Nature really is like I felt healed all the time and rejuvenated. So when I opened my eyes and usually the sun was out, or I could see some sort of dappling of the sun on things around me, and my spirits were lifted and I felt healed. So it would be often after a morning of, working or some kind of chores or doing schoolwork, or, I grew up in a family with an older brother and a younger sister. So sometimes there was sibling scrapping, I'm sure, and I go lay in the meadow as part of my recovery from that. But really, Mother Nature provided all of these examples also of things that just came back without me doing anything. Crocuses every spring are just a wonderful example of that. They pop up their little heads and they're so purple and cute and vibrant. And the ones we had were wild and they were fuzzy. And so there was evidence every single springtime that this miracle was going to happen, and we would anticipate it, and it would just be the coolest thing, going and pick these little flowers for my mom, and they had little short stubby stems, but you'd really see that nature was taking care of things. And even things that got bent over by the cattle as they walked through the pasture, they would stand upright the next day. Nature has a way of healing herself. We want to be healed. We want to be healed. We heal ourselves. So there's been all this healing around me that I've recognized frequently. Yes, that we have nothing to do with, nothing. We can't take any credit. It's just so we do things that destroy ourselves pretty frequently. But if we're living in symbiosis with nature and with what we're supposed to be doing towards wellness, really that fear and uncertainty is taken away, because for the most part, people are well, things are well around us.
Yeah, well, those are two really hot tips. So the first one is, if you're listening to the show and you have a diagnosis of a major disease or illness, remember, it's just one opinion. It's a diagnosis. Yes. And if you can stay out of fear as quickly as possible and realize that you're the one that's in charge, not your doctor. So that would be one hot tip from this conversation. The second one is, don't forget that, your inner nature, you are nature. You could never be separated from nature. So getting back into nature, or embracing nature, or healing with nature, is one of the quick road back to wellness and vibrant health. So two really important things that you're communicating with people listening to this show. Because, a diagnosis, if you had succumbed to that belief, you probably wouldn't be here now.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. I think that's an accurate statement. There's so many people in the Huntington's community that really are that commit suicide. There's a very high suicide rate because people are hopeless and they're in despair when they get this news. And sometimes before they even get the news, if they have it in their family, they feel hopeless about getting the disease. So suicide rates are very high. Also, people have dementia or cognitive malfunction or any kind of mental wellness issue. They go, well, I must be sick, I must be symptomatic, versus 2/3 of the population of the world has something going on with them that isn't quite right. So it might not have anything to do with the disease at all. And I love the point about, the hot tip of don't believe everything that you're told, because people want to tell you stuff all the time that isn't accurate. We were out for lunch with some friends recently, and one of our friends is a doctor, and he looked over the table and he was looking at my fingernails, and he said, do you have, are those your real nails? And I said, no, I get my nails done. He goes, oh, so thank goodness, because I could see that this was a little bit raised there. And I thought maybe you had this really bad. And then he started to say whatever the thing was. And he's a cancer doctor at the Cross up here in Edmonton. And I said, hang on a minute. I'm fine. Like, what are you doing? Like, why would you say such a thing? To me, it was the most bizarre exchange ever. Like, it's like medieval spell casting. Well, you must have this because you have this little, mole on your face, or whatever it is. But people do that really frequently without even knowing it. If you have a little bit of a sniffle on Monday, for sure you're going to be sick on Wednesday, and you're going to be off work by Friday. So yeah, just being aware of how much other people want to influence your wellness, and whether they're well-intentioned or not, that it just seems to be the nature currently of communicating, is we communicate through our illness, our defects, our maladies. So the hot tip is to figure out how to communicate and connect through things that are uplifting and that are, solid and make you happy and that move you towards wellness. So those things that you're creating wellness in the space of whatever conversations you're having.
So how did you come to, there's obviously, with a diagnosis, there's symptoms and things that, if that were true, that you could expect to show up in your life. And, if your body was trying to tell you something with the symptoms, how were you able to determine what your body was telling you?
Yeah, so with me, I had some... I have the genetic status for HD. So you can go in for genetic testing, and when you go in for genetic testing, that gives you an absolute result, not like other tests where you go in and there's like an increased probability of you having heart disease, for example, or Alzheimer's, or any of those things in your family. So some of the genetic testing is really popular now because you can get these health profiles. And mine is not a health profile genetic test. Mine's actually done. It's a worldwide initiative that's only done for Huntington's and sickle cell anemia. So, and the reason why they have a protocol internationally for doing the testing is because when people are given this particular diagnosis, they lose hope right away because there's no cure. With other diseases, there is a cure. So as far as symptoms go, I don't have any symptoms. The only symptom I have had for over the 10-year span is I had one incident of what I would say would have been closest to, like I thought I was having some sort of a psychotic break, but what actually had happened was I was drugged, that somebody had drugged a drink at a red carpet event that I was at. And I was able to figure out what was wrong because I went in for blood tests because my behavior was so just completely different than any way I had ever acted. But that particular behavior is not that uncommon in Huntington's disease. So if I didn't know that I wasn't sick, I would have automatically thought, oh, this is the HD. But I thought, there's something wrong here. So I went in immediately after this event, had the blood work done, and it came back, yes, that I had actually been doped. So it's important to know your own wellness and to know what's true for you, and then to test also, to test everything. If you're able to test and measure and manage things, then you can gauge whether or not you're well.
So is that your diagnosis then from a genetic predetermination from
Yes.
your lineage? Is that how they arrived at this diagnosis? Well,
Yes.
then this is another hot tip, isn't it? That just because you have a predetermination from a genetic, gene or whatever, doesn't mean that that's going to happen in your life. That if you're in charge of your life and you can actually turn it around, and you're proof positive that it's not a foregone genetic one-to-one connection.
Yes.
If you understand what I'm getting at. In other words,
Yeah.
you through your consciousness can interact with your genetics and change them. That's
Yes.
an exciting insight, because that's exactly what you did. You said, no, I don't want that diagnosis. It may be in my family history, it may be in my lineage, but it doesn't mean that I have to take that on.
Absolutely, and really critical to know, because because the testing is so perfect, they can actually see what's your allele count, it's called. And so we can see that my allele count is whatever the number is, but my family's allele counts, again, because this is familial, are all the same. So we should all have the same symptoms according to what the Huntington's scientists report. So that is actually what is believed in the community, is that, oh, if you have this particular repeat count, then that's actually what your symptoms are going to look like. So I was talking to a young lady just yesterday whose mom died of this when she was 47, when the mother was 47. So the girls were quite young. And she said, well, that she and her sister just started talking about Huntington's. And, she goes, your allele count is your allele count. So I said, no, hun, it's not. And she was like, what do you mean? I said, everybody in my family has the same allele count and nobody has the same symptoms. My dad is still at home. I have two cousins that are just a few years older than me that are both institutionalized. And we have other family members that lived, long lives, but, some of them in care, so the assumption that you're going to be sick, is a problem. Your family's genetic destiny or your legacy from your family, if it's not that hot, you don't have to pick up on it. You don't have to continue it going. You completely have a choice about how you want things to manifest in your life. So I encourage people to think about, what kind of legacy are you creating here? We have this genetic imprinting, supposedly, which can now, though, be changed through epigenetic, changing your genetic expression through the way that you live your life and the way that you think and the way that you mind your mind, consciousness and energy, those types of things, having higher thoughts, knowing how the brain functions, healing your brain first, so that you can have a mind that's pristine, that can actually think thoughts that are proper, and then you can have control over your life and your destiny and how well you are, and also the wellness of your family then. So you can change it not just for yourself, but you can change it for future generations. And as a grandmother, I can tell you, when I look at my grandsons, I just think, I'm going to be well for a really, really long time. Like, you guys are going to have to ride bikes with me. Sorry, guys. But, but having that attitude.
Yeah, absolutely. That's another important attitude. Not coming from the Tao, when you're going back 7 generations and 9 generations into the future. This is why this work is so important. And part of your soul family contract is involved in that as well, and probably why you chose to incarnate into that lineage is the choice is yours, whether the buck stops in your generation, and thank goodness you've taken on that and said, no, I this is the last, that this needs to show up, certainly in my lineage, and I'm going to take care of it and demonstrate that one doesn't have to succumb to it. That's another part I hope people pick up, is that you are in charge. And when you take charge of your life like you have, wow, you're doing it for, just think how many people that is, right? 7 generations one way, 9 generations other. We're talking in the hundreds of lives that you're influencing by you standing in your own truth, taking your power back and say, I can heal myself.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. And my parents, I think, did an absolutely incredible job of starting to break away from the genetic story. So my mom had a genetic story of alcoholism in her family, and just that was a breakaway for them. And then with the Huntington's disease in my dad's family, they made a really conscious decision when they were first married to not act like grandma. I was like, really? That was a conversation? Yes, that was a conversation that we decided we were not going to act like her. And I said, well, what did she act like? And for my grandmother, she was paranoid. So everything that we would do it was like a big drama. Oh, don't touch that. Oh, you're going to hurt yourself. And so very overreacting about things. And on a farm, there's a lot of things to overreact about. So she was probably on fire most of the time. Yeah. And my dad just was, and parents were both in alignment about this. So that's really important too. I think a takeaway of being in alignment, find other people to be in alignment with you about moving yourself towards wellness. So I had all these incredible opportunities really to look at them and to learn different things. My dad's still at home. He's 80 years old this year, and he's at home. He has Huntington's, but he removes, so he looks like he's drunk a lot of the time. That's his big symptom. But he's in better shape than a lot of 40-year-olds I know. He was taking snow off the roof this past winter. He still has a garden. They just moved off the farm, a fully operational farm 4 years ago. So he was still well into his 70s when they did that. And so that example of, well, how you live your life is one. So taking care of how you think. So he had to plan every day. Taking care of your nutrition. He watched what he ate, and he ate, on a regular basis. He had physical activity all the time. He had to keep track of things, and he had to be responsible for planning and for remembering and for fixing things and taking care of animals. And I think the other one that people don't talk about enough is that he had a partner who he's wildly in love with her. Right. So that's a big thing is having, and some people who love you incredibly, and they have built a community of people that also love them incredibly. And they've all retired to the same city. So they all, help each other with snow removal and taking each other to health appointments. And the wisdom of, well, how could you find some wiggle room here on whatever your challenge is to be well one more day? So my uncles are my dad's brothers. They don't have Huntington's, but they're 10 years older than him. So my dad's 80, my uncle turned 90 this year, and one's 87. And they're still playing guitar and singing and entertaining people in the city they live in, a couple of times a week. So the attitude of just living vibrantly, and contributing and staying well and staying active, I think also is how you build a fearless life, and that whole, your own competencies help you to be confident in yourself and your ability to manage life no matter what comes at you.
Yeah, I like that. So managing your life, particularly if you have a disease or something like that, or a disability, that managing your life with some sort of schedule, having community of friends and like-minded people to be around to support you, to help you through the times that may be more difficult. So for you, because the topic is how to fear absolutely nothing, what do you do? I mean, fear is sort of, one of our innate primal reptilian, whatever shows up in our life, and our ego seems to thrive on it. We sort of, that adrenaline rush of seems to be something that we crave. And for some of us, not necessarily me at the moment, we want to go to the edge of anything to experience that, that life or death moment. So how do you pull yourself back from the edge of fear?
Well, I think just a couple of pretty critical things. One is, again, knowing that there's times when it's appropriate to be afraid and get out of the way because you are going to get killed. So don't do that. Don't do that to yourself. Don't do that to yourself. So, but this amazing amount of time that we spend just in, life is not certain anyway. So the idea that we have some sort of control over things is a fantasy. We can live a good life, and we can figure out how to respond and react in situations, and all of that's great. But the actual idea of having control is the problem. It's crippling. So, and you can't live a really good life if you've got a crippled spirit. So if you're always, fearful and checking behind doors and checking for the boogeyman and figuring out what might happen in the next, 2 weeks, you're constantly, or even when you wake up in the morning and plans change and you haven't figured out how to maturely adapt with good coping mechanisms to that, you could spend the whole day disappointed, frustrated, resentful, etc. And most of that comes from feeling entitled. And we grow up in a culture that says we're entitled to something. I'm entitled to have a great day. I'm entitled to be safe. But the truth is, no one's entitled to anything. We see in other countries that they get bombed all the time, and yet somehow we think, underlying everything, that we should be protected and safe from everything. Why? It's just because that's how our culture has been indoctrinated, right? So when you really dissect that, though, the way to not fear anything is to understand that it's a complete wasted emotion. except in the case of a, saber-toothed tiger or a car. And then so you're wasting all this emotion when really fear can be a friend of going, okay, so where's this feeling of resentment coming from, or uncomfortable or frustrated or annoyed, discouraged? Where are those feelings coming from? And then underlying all that is usually fear. So you usually have a first feeling, and then when you dissect it, you look and you go, okay, I'm scared. I'm scared here of something that's going to happen. Someone's not going to like me anymore. I'm not going to get paid. I'm going to lose my job. I can't pay my bills. I'm going to be unwell, like all that underlying stuff. But what is true is what you need to ask yourself. And then, if you're telling yourself the truth about something, what are you going to do to course correct it? So it's just that you're the one that's in control of the course correction. And I think one of the biggest crimes done to people is, again, with this whole indoctrination piece, is that we expect somebody outside of ourselves to fix things all the time. So the doctor's going to fix me, and the next guru's going to fix me, and whatever it is that we figure somebody else is going to fix the problems in our life. I recently had this really hilarious communication with my mom. I'm sure she wouldn't mind if I shared it, but it was just about, like, I prayed that God would help me figure out a way to lose this weight without actually having to watch what I eat. Mom. And then we killed ourselves laughing because, it's just so funny. But she's afraid of not being well. The fear is driving I need to be well. I need to lose a little bit of weight to feel like I'm well. But the answer, the worry, the concern is not going to be served by the I'm not going to do anything about it attitude. Like, you actually have to be the one that does the thing that's going to remove the fear from your life. So being fearless and creating a fearless existence is really treating yourself as if you are the most magnificent thing in the world. And that you treat yourself like that because you can figure things out. You can figure things out.
Yes.
And from that position,
so unconditional love.
Yeah, unconditional love. And that you've got
that.
Yeah. And that other people
wonderful.
Also do too. Yeah.
Oh yeah. When you love yourself, then other people, you're giving permission to other people to love you just as much as you love yourself.
Yeah.
I have a friend who, I love what he's saying. He says that he welcomes fear now, and actually because he knows that there's a big gift when he figures it out. So when he goes and embraces the fear, he knows he has a big gift, and that's pretty exciting when you can get to that attitude towards it, that it's actually a friend. I think it's really interesting what you're saying about your mom and losing weight. It isn't ironic, because the more that we, and I'm in the same boat, the more I obsess about it, right? The more that I'm creating the stress and the hormones and the whole blocking and trapping the emotions, into the fat cells. So every time I think about it in that way to the very goal that I want to accomplish. And whereas you're saying, well, Tyhson, if you surrender and love yourself, then you'd probably be able to lose a little weight quite naturally. So it's a sort of attitude of gratitude that allows you to change course, so to speak.
Yeah, and I think that too, if you see yourself, I lost 100 pounds, over 100 pounds, over 20 years ago, and I've kept it off. And that's been an evolution. I learned a lot about nutrition, and I learned a lot about things that work and don't work. I know a ton about nutrition because of brain health and what to eat because you want to, protect your brain cells, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And all that stuff is magnificent. But when I really got mastery over this whole disordered eating thing, was a couple of things happened. Somebody said, instead of calling it an eating disorder, call it disordered eating, and that you just need to put your food in order. And I went, wow, that's a really great way of looking at it. Okay, so then what would that look like? How would I make it so that it made sense the way that I eat? Then the second piece of information that came to me was, well, if I actually am made in the image of God, and that that is true, then, and everyone is made in the image of God. We don't have to get into religion, but just spiritually, if 99% of people in the world agree that God exists, then we can all start there and go, okay, if God exists and he made me and you and, Bob down the street and the aardvarks and all that other good stuff, then we're made in the image of, because we're supposed to glorify God. That's what we're supposed to be doing here, is, being the best version of ourselves that we can be. Then if that was true, if we were actually doing that, if God came into our house, which is us, then would we feed him a Big Mac? So I just looked at that differently and went, well, no, I wouldn't. So when I look at myself from the perspective of being, God's creation, I go, would I feed this creation? Would I offer this creation? And I'm not saying Big Macs are bad inherently. Eat scones, eat whatever you want, enjoy them, love food, but understand that if you were treating yourself from a position of unconditional love, of real unconditional love, then you would love yourself so much that you would never, ever do anything to harm yourself. You just would not. You would not betray yourself. And you can betray yourself through the way that you think, the food you ingest, the people you hang around, the thoughts you think, the beliefs you hold. And it's our job to reveal these false beliefs and go, what? How did I ever believe that? Well, because we're all here to learn, right? And to untwine the things that are beliefs that we hold that are not true. And so that's what creates fear also, is this idea that something else is going to come at us from above us that's punitive and is going to, say, oh, you're a bad so-and-so, you're a bad Tyhson because you didn't fill in the blank here. That is never going to happen. As the arms are open of the creator, and the creator says, you're doing a great job. You need to learn some things, and we're all learning things, but you're perfect. You were perfect when I put you here, and you're perfect now. So when we look at each other that
I
way,
think that's an important concept.
So important.
You're created by creator. You're loved, always has been,
Yes.
and always will be. You could never get it wrong, even if you tried. So the only person that put yourself on the hook and take yourself off the hook is yourself. A big one for people to sort of grasp.
Yes.
It's pretty straightforward. If you're one with source and separation is illusion, then the fact that we think we're separation is a big fat lie.
It's
we believe.
Yes. And it's incredibly liberating and fun to go, wait a minute. Do you mean that I actually, if I could treat myself like I would actually treat God? Like, that's just a mind-blowing concept. Well, how would I treat God?
Yeah.
I would take God for car rides. We'd have fun. We'd have good coffee. Yeah. We'd have great conversation. I might tan for 10 minutes with God. I don't know. But it's like then you get playful with it and go, well, what would I actually do? It would be fun, and it should be fun, so that's where you get this. You should be fearless, because that is what it is. You're walking in that spirit all the time, if you allow it, if you connect with it completely and totally and wholly. But it is getting out of the way of a lot of indoctrination, and that's a bit of an undoing. So, and that's okay. We're all here to learn and undo and redo. So it's great.
Yeah, I think that last comment is worth repeating too, is that, the whole way that our society is going, with DEFCON 4 and, orange and red and all these, beep, 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 is, really underlying the fear, surrender under Caesar, or give away your own private security because you need to be protected from the boogeyman,
right?
Whoever the boogeyman of the day is. And so taking back your personal power and standing in your truth no matter what is really the fundamental of what you're teaching people as well, is to fearless, is that you trust yourself that, that you're going to be in the right place at the right time and be taken care of. So, yeah, I love the whole idea of trying to be, learn how to be fearless. And, and if we're not in the moment, we can always choose to do something other than we're doing. I mean, it's a progression. We don't have to be totally fearless tomorrow morning. We might have something that scares the bejesus out of us.
Right. Yes, and notice it, and then go, what deconstruct it. And just go, here it is. Deconstruct it. What are the components of it? If you were looking at teaching somebody how to do a forward roll or do a somersault, I hope everyone remembers how to do a somersault or skipping or anything. But you break the thing that you're you break it down into its components, and you can see that somebody struggles with some of the components, and that's okay. You just, back it up and coach a different way. And when we learn to do that with ourselves, we can really break down anything that we haven't quite figured out yet and go, well, how would I look at that or approach that differently? Like, what is it that's causing me to be afraid? How, really, it could be such simple things that we get overwhelmed with. And it could also be based on just having assumptions about things and not asking enough questions. So developing a curiosity, internal curiosity of going, hey, poking around in here, what's going on in here? And like, be the Sherlock Holmes in your own life and dissect your thinking. And if you have great mentors, this is why coaches and mentors are so important, and mentorship groups, whatever they are, is that you can actually check your thinking and say, hey, I woke up this morning and I was afraid of, or I had this experience and I had this fear come up. Can we talk through it? And a wise mentor, not just, Sam down at the local bar, but who's might be also great too. I don't know. But like, you get good mentors in your life because they can actually help to really fold time. So it's like quantum leaps happen when you're in groups of good people, and you can just eradicate a lot of fear by people calming you down and say, I remember a time when I was going through this really challenging thing, and what the outcome was fill in the blank here. And I'm okay. So you're going to be all right. Because I'm no different than you. Believe me, I'm no smarter than you, no more endowed than you, no more than anything. I'm exactly the same as you. So if I can figure it out, I can guarantee you that you can figure it out. Yeah.
Well, this is a great segue into, now that you've learned these aspects for yourself. Of course, your passion is now to help other people be able to do the turnaround in their lives as well. So let's talk a bit about that. So you mentioned coaching and mentorship, and I'm assuming that that's exactly where people who want to reach out and learn how to become fearless themselves. Is that correct?
Yes. Yeah, absolutely. And I'm available at leahamattinson.com. You can get a hold of me we primarily deal with helping people with chronic and terminal illness to find their wellness within themselves. So we do that through coaching and online live webinars. We also run masterminds, so higher level groups for people who want to get more leverage, or if they're working within family systems, sometimes there's better approaches than just coming for a weekly live webinar. But really, it's teaching the same fundamental things, removing fear from your life, becoming super competent and super confident in yourself. And that's just learning the lesson that sometimes things really do kick you in the butt. So not letting the butt kicking take the wind out of your sails, so you get back up and be the champion in your own life, because you're not the only one that's affected by all of this. We talk about collective consciousness, and really, if you're getting up with the emotional emotion every day of feeling fearful, scared, that's what's going out to everybody. Whereas if you wake up in the morning and you're feeling incredible about your life and the way things are going, and you've got things mastered, even in really challenging circumstances, that all goes out to everybody too, not just the people in your home, but the universe at large. So even if you think, I don't even know if I have the energy to do this work for myself, but if you understand that what your energy is affecting everybody, it can kind of maybe be a little bit of a catalyst for you to go, if I was going to walk out in the world today and make a difference for somebody else, then how would I do that? And you don't even need to leave your four walls. You can just think a better thought. You can just put out a better vibe. You can just, be more energetic in your own life and your thinking. So that's what we really focus on and teach and talk about a lot, is minding your mind.
Yeah, minding your mind. It's better than never minding and no mind.
Right.
So, Leaha, it sounds like, if you can't have the gumption or the wherewithal to do it for yourself, as in the beginning, you want to be healthy, wealthy, and wise and fearless for your grandchildren and your children. So, if you can't do it for yourself, at least to do it for your descendants. So right. The beautiful thing is about this work is when you clean up yourself, you really do clean up your lineage and your descendants. And what could be better than that? That's an exciting thing to do. So It seems as though we're starting to wrap up, but I don't want to close the door on this incredible topic if there isn't something else that you want to bring out, any other insights or ahas or last final thoughts you want to leave with people? Because this is a really important topic.
Yeah.
There's so many people just get into non-movement over fear.
Yes. Yeah. If you are stuck in fear or hopelessness or any of those things, we're really encouraged to be in that space through indoctrination. And so just understand that you have learned this fearful behavior for about the last 200 to 300 years. This has been imprinted on you. So understand that you have learned it and that it can be unlearned. I think that's what people need to hear and to know, and to go, oh, I just never even thought that I was actually taught this thing. You've been taught it, so it can be untaught, it can be unwrapped, it can be unpackaged. You can fix things yourself, and you can look for mentorship, and there is hope that you can do all those things. And it's such a different skin to wake up in the world when you're happy than when you're angry and fearful. So the other side of fear is love, right? That's it. So if the only thought you can have when you feel scared is, I need to find the love within myself right now or for somebody else to move me out of this, draw it on a piece of paper, put it on your fridge. You only get to feed one fire at a time. So you're either feeding fear or you're feeding love. That's it. So you're throwing your little sticks on your fire, your logs, your thoughts. So which fire are you feeding all the time? And make it a conscious thing where you write notes to yourself, write love notes to yourself. Find the love for yourself and for other people, but consciously do that. Don't just think about it. Make notes, journal, put love notes on your fridge, put love notes on your mirror for when you wake up in the morning and you're looking at yourself, putting yourself together in the morning, and love yourself. Just love the heck right out of yourself. That's my wrap note.
I love it. That was wonderful. And I thank you ever so much for being on the 200 show. What a great way to bring around full circle and talk about something so fundamentally important for all, a smile on our face, and to know that this is our choice in every moment. Do you want to come from fear or do you want to come from love? That's your choice. So choose wisely. So thank you ever so much. It was great. I loved having you on the show, and hopefully those that are listening to the show will reach out and change their lives with you.
Thanks so much, Tyson.
Yes, thank you. Bye for now.
Bye for now.
For quality online wellness products, courses, and services, visit our sponsors, thewellnessstore.ca and the Extraordinary Healing Arts Academy located at thewellnessacademy.ca. To stay in touch, visit us at thewellnessshow.ca. And until next time, be healthy, wealthy, and wise.